So, Craig, thank you for taking the time out to join me with this key conversation. This is our second key conversation for the speakers initiates. And how are you today?
Good, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So you've given me some pretty awesome questions that you'd like to respond to, and I have them here with me. So the point of today's conversation is to give the listeners an idea about who you are as a speaker and the message that you're going to be sharing with the audience at the Speakers Initiates Key Talk that is coming up on September 25th. So are you ready to go through your questions?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, so we'll start with the first one. What are you passionate about right now?
So right now I'm really into mental health and, helping, other people that are suffering from mental illnesses to see that you can, live a really good life, even with these conditions.
Okay, so do you want to share a little bit more about the actual mental health issues, or is that something that you want to elaborate on with your presentation?
I'll probably elaborate more about it with my presentation, but obviously there's, problems with people getting access to mental health services. At the moment, there's extraordinarily long wait times to see a lot of psychologists, which is making it very difficult for people that need assistance straight away to actually get it.
Yeah, sure, that's totally true. I can appreciate that. With my background in psychiatric nursing, I definitely saw wait lists were terrible for people that really desperately needed the help, and often they resorted to some of the worst types of actions to help get through, which could have been alcohol, which could have been self-harm, which could have been, isolating themselves and just making things a lot more difficult for people that needed the help.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you're in these crises, you need help pretty much straight away. And, even myself, if I have to call up my psychologist, it's almost impossible to get in to see him outside of my appointment hours. So, what do you do in that case where, you really need to talk to somebody? And I know that there's different services like Beyond Blue and all the other ones that do, telephone counselling, but me personally, I've never been very big on the telephone counselling part of it. So, and that might be just a me thing, but
yeah, no, totally. And you're right, there are services out there. It's just everyone's for want of a better phrase, horses for courses. Certain things work better for certain people, and as long as you know that about your own situation, that's ideal. It means at least you know how better to deal with your needs and your crisis at the time that it's happening. So, yeah, very insightful. Good of you to share that. Thank you. So the next question will be, what's a common myth about the thing you're passionate about or this topic that you speak about, and how would you debunk the myth?
So I've sort of got two that I can think of off the top of my head, and one of them is obviously I've heard the phrase before, suicide is the coward's way out.
Horrible words.
It is, and it's, and these people, I get it, they mean well, but quite frankly, they don't have a clue what it's like. Especially when you're in that state of mind, you're not thinking objectively, you're not making logical decisions. Your troubles often seem like, you're climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah.
Even though to someone else there might be, a molehill. And you finally reach breaking point, and it's the only way out for some people. And it's awful that it has to get to that stage, but that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of myths, and it's very timely that we're having our conversation today and that you are presenting in September, given that there are two really major campaigns that take place, the Are You OK Day campaign and the World Suicide Prevention Day that took place only 2 days before that. So it's becoming, I'm finding particularly, a really open conversation now. It is like it's reached that tipping point now where people are now recognising that it must be talked about, it is okay to talk about, and we will bumble our way through it, but we will at least make it now that we're talking about it, where previously people didn't know how to, so they wouldn't. that being the people that wanted to help but didn't know how to, or those who had the problems and didn't know how to. Would you agree with any of that?
Yes, I would. It's we're definitely getting better with discussions around mental health. There's still a long way that we need to go, but we definitely are. As a society, it's more in tune now to these problems existed. When I was diagnosed with depression back when I was 12, there really wasn't much. I remember the doctors telling my mum, I think my mum said to him, could it be depression or something like that? And they're like, no, kids that age don't get depression then, but as we know now, they actually do.
Yeah, totally agree. As soon as I heard you saying that, it was like my inner spidey senses went off, and I remember dealing with young children that were having enormous difficulties coping with that intense emotional grief and trauma that was in their worlds. And it manifests as depression. They don't know how else to deal with it. So I totally hear you when you say that.
Yeah, and for me, like what triggered it part off was I lost my maternal grandfather when I was about 11 or 12, and I just didn't know how to deal with the grief, to be honest. And I think if I look back at it, that's where my depression started. If I was going to look for a trigger point and say that was it was at that point. So you're talking about managing grief, and it's very, very relevant.
Yeah, very much so. Well, thank you again. Thank you for sharing that. The next question that we have for you is, what led you to this project or the profession that you've chosen, this whole stepping up before a microphone? What's led you to this?
Well, I've as I mentioned, I've had depression since I was 12 and schizophrenia since I was 17 years old. In my early 20s, there were a number of suicide attempts. I just wasn't really thinking straight. And 1 minute I might be staring at all my medication packets and they'd be full, and then the next minute they'd be empty, and I'd be left thinking to myself, what have I done this time? But what I really want is, now that I'm a lot older, that's behind me now, the suicide attempts. I've still got the depression and schizophrenia, but they're under control generally. I want to be able to help other people. I want them to see that, yes, these things are there. Mental illness is there. It's not going away for some people. Even my psychiatrist has said, I'm a lifer. He said, Craig, you're not going to be able to get away with not having medication, for the rest of your life, to make sure that everything's okay. So if I can help one single person with, my story, then it was all worth it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I guess that's really why it was so important for me when I was creating the Speakers Initiative, to really find people that were in positions to be able to share their stories, whatever those stories were, whatever the cause or the passion, because it's about reaching that one person. We may have a room full of 100 people, but it may be just that one person in the room who needs to hear the message, or who the message resonates with because they either are in the situation or they are experiencing that particular moment. It might be their grief, their trauma, their hardship of some kind. And our voices are the ones that tap in and help them to find that ray of light, that sense of hope. So you are that sense of hope. That's what we're here for. And I think it's really important that we have the confidence to step up. And even though it might be stepping on a stage with a microphone, these days, we're also here today on the computers, but it's a way of reaching out. And, I say kudos to anyone, including yourself, for being able to step up and share what can be a really deeply personal story and be there to help other people. So I think, if we can do that, then let's just keep doing it. That's what these conversations are for.
Yeah, well, I've heard from other speakers before where they've said, they've had someone that, they were talking about mental health or something, and then, someone from the crowd later on would come up to them and, would say, your story really touched me, and, I was actually thinking about, going home and ending it all, but now I'm going to continue on. And that's just an indication of how powerful your story might be to somebody out there who's suffering from a similar problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so important that we keep these conversations going, totally. Our next question is that many people believe that being a public speaker is fairly challenging. So, why do you think it is that people believe that?
I think a lot of people have got a fear about public speaking. They're absolutely terrified of it, and they don't know. There's nothing worse to them than public speaking. And I used to be one of those people. I'm not. I always used to say I'm a computer engineer by trade, and I would say to everyone, "Oh, I just hide out the back, in the cave," and they just bring me out every now and then when they need me. But I've learned that, through all my trainings that, I do have a powerful message, and I do want to serve my audience, and I do want to get out there and tell my story. But yeah, definitely, I think it's fear for a lot of people. It's just the fear of, am I going to make a fool of myself? I'm not good enough? People don't want to hear what I have to say. All those sort of things.
Yeah, and what if I forget my message and,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. Yeah. I shared with Joanna the experience I had when I was in high school with the public. It was called the Plain English Speaking Competition. And I was I probably would have been about 15, and I stood up on the stage with 4 or 5 other competitors, and I was the only one that stood up and completely forgot my lines. And I had those little cards that have the written prompters on them that you flip through to remind you. Misplaced them, completely stuffed up. I just was like a deer in the spotlight. And it was humiliating, to say the least. It was the most shattering experience. And as I shared with Yolana, there was 400 people staring at me. And I was in just absolute panic because it was school. It was a pretty critical time when you're a teenager and things go wrong. But needless to say, I actually challenged myself at the end of the last speaker and said to the principal, I want to get up and just finish. So he let me get back up, and I was pretty pleased with myself. I finished it, and I think I came 3rd after all that. So it is, I totally get what that fear is like. And like you, I was terrified. It took me a long time to find my voice and to feel that it was okay to step up in front of people. So it's a very empowering thing, and I can totally understand the fear behind it. But I think when you've got a message to share, it's important to find that training that helps you to step up so that you can share the message, because there are a lot of people who need to hear them.
Yeah, definitely. And, for me, I found that I needed to, I would write out my whole speech, word for word. And then I realized that, in my trainings, when we had to deliver presentations, that I worked better from memory. Like, if I just sort of had key points, and as I would go, I would elaborate on those key points. The speeches seemed to be, the presentation seemed to be far better and flow a lot easier for me than if I was trying to remember piece by piece the entire scripted presentation.
And it comes with experience as well too. Certainly some of the very high level, more expert speakers, they do speak about, or their tips, I suppose, would be that, remember it word for word, not because it's important to rehearse it and speak it word for word, but it is a bit like, and the best, I guess the best way that they made me remember it is, the words to your favourite song. Everyone knows that if they've got their favourite song, they can remember exactly word for word. And even though that might only be for 3 or 4 minutes that it plays, you never forget the words. And the speaker that I was listening to who gave me that advice pretty much said, if you can get yourself into the rhythm of always remembering the words, you find the way to have the hook and the key message always comes through. And that was really clever. It was a good way. But, we're going from 3-minute concepts to our 30-minute presentations that we do. So good luck remembering every single word in a 30-minute presentation. But I think, I agree. Sometimes you just got to have your key concepts there. And when you're confident enough about your message, it comes through. So, yeah, good on you for being willing to do it, I say. It's a big step from, the trainings that we've done through to taking this big leap. But, hey, in those big leaps, that's where the learning experiences are.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, we've got one last question to go. What do you think is the most common reason for people failing or giving up?
I think it's definitely the fear again. All those fears of I'm not good enough, and I don't know my words, and I'm terrible public speaker. And they let that manifest itself into, they work themselves up to a point where they actually believe it all, and then they just give up on it. And you do need to practice, a lot. Like, I practice a lot with my iPhone and recording myself, and with the video camera to see how I look and how the message comes across. But yeah, I definitely think it's definitely the fear that stops a lot of people.
Yeah, and fear is quite the crippling emotion. It can be the one that cripples people the most. And as often is said, that fear is quite irrational, although it never seems irrational at the time. It's obviously an innate thing that we have. The fear and the anger are our fight-flight response. They're supposed to be there to give us the warnings to save us from danger or get us to escape from danger. Obviously we feel that fear. I guess that's where that phrase came in, feel the fear and do it anyway. So that's what we're doing. We're getting in there and giving it a go. So, it's a message to, I suppose, whoever might be listening today, is that if you feel like you are scared beyond wits and don't think you can grab the microphone and speak, go and get some training. Really obviously get some training. That's what this whole message from us is all about. I mean, Craig and I have both had training, and anyone that speaks with the Speakers Initiative has to have some form of training, because we want you to feel comfortable getting up and sharing the message, because you've definitely got a message. So, yeah, if Craig's feeling the fear and does it anyway, hey, let's just get in there and do it. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, cool. Well, there's only one last question, Craig, and I think it's that most important question. What is it that you do first thing in the morning that gets you started for your day?
I usually take 5 or 10 minutes out, and for me, like, I just check the news and that sort of stuff, just to see what's going on in the world, and then it sort of gives me some time to relax, and then I just get straight into it. Whether that's mostly everything I do is on a computer these days, so it just gives me a bit of extra time before I might start coding or doing something else. So.
Cool. Yeah. So you're not a must-have morning coffee person?
I might have a coffee. It kind of depends. I'm a bit variable with coffee. Sometimes I might have it, every day for a week or two, and then I might not touch it again for another week. So it's not a huge thing for me.
It's funny. There are people that absolutely must have a coffee. And me, I'm a tea drinker. I could drink a pot of the stuff anytime, any day. I'm a bit of a tea junkie, but I think the most important thing is those little morning rituals that we have that take us into that zone where we can at least get ourselves focused for the day. For me, it's like I have a particular type of planner where I sit for 5 to 10 minutes and plan out more the state of mind stuff that I need to work through. I think the morning rituals certainly help. So again, it's one of those things that helps us get through the day and deal with some of the stuff that can come up, because as you and I both know, that there's always something that can happen during the day that can take you out of your mind state, and you have to be aware of how can you practice to get back into a positive mind state that's going to at least get you through and buffer you against whatever's going on around you.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, Craig, so it's not too long now. We've only got a week until you start with your presentation for the Speakers Initiative. Are you looking forward to it?
I am, yes. I've been practicing, and I'm feeling pretty good about it, actually.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be really, really good, and I think it's a message that the audience needs to hear. And so for anyone listening, Craig's going to be talking about his experience with mental illness and a story that he had to help him see that there's a way to gain triumph over adversity, would you say, Craig?
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we're looking forward to that. So Wednesday, 25th of September for the Speakers Initiate's Key Talks. And today, this was our key conversation with Craig. So thank you for your time, Craig. It's been really enjoyable.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it.